Evening, everybody. Welcome back to the second of our COVID conversations for Lent this year. Last week we talked to one of the senior doctors in Altnagelvin Hospital about her experiences, and now we have two fascinating people here who are working with those who are in need of supported help in accommodation, very often those who are homeless for one reason or another in our city, from the First Housing Organisation. Eileen Best, you're Head of Services.
That's right, Donal.
What does that mean?
It means that I'm responsible for all the services that First Housing provide in the city and throughout Northern Ireland. So we've got a range of services that respond to the needs of homeless people, and we would look at services for young people coming out of care, and young people who have family difficulties. We also have services for families, for single parents. We have services for people with addictions. We provide street homeless services. So anyone who finds themselves in a homeless situation, our organisation is there to respond. And we've been in the city for nearly 30 years working to alleviate the needs of people who find themselves in a homeless situation.
And it began from very small beginnings.
Very humble beginnings. It was set up initially in 1989 by a man named Jerry Coates. There was only 4 people when the organisation was first set up, and since that it has grown. We've got about 150 staff now that are working in the homeless sector throughout Northern Ireland, both in the city and further afield. So it has grown from humble beginnings, and I initially came into the organisation in 1990, and I thought I was coming for 2 years as a housing advisor, and I've stayed for 30.
Wonderful and wonderful. A good faithfulness, commitment to the work. Adrian, you're looking after 3 of the projects, 3 of the hostels, Adrian Kehoe now, and you've been doing that for a considerable length of time as well, have you?
Well, 20 years and 15 years along with First Housing, and I came in first of all, was the very first project that was for young people who would have came through the care system. And then we developed France Street. Was purposely built for our young people to take care for the needs, some of them, and for different reasons for homelessness. Some of them through maybe addictions, some of them through they come through the care system and may have suffered abuse through their times of different forms. Some of them fight their sexuality. So it's a way of trying to get them a stepping. France was set up as a stepping stone to come from care into the community, and it's just trying to make that transition as transparent as possible and as easy as possible for these young people.
It's a very personal service. I mean, it must be an exhausting level of work to be involved in, because you're working with people, individuals who are in crisis situations and who need a lot of help and stability, and I presume they come to people like yourself for that.
It's enjoyable. You know, I love what I do. I don't think there's ever been a day that I've gone to my work that I didn't want to go to my work. I get up, want to be there, I enjoy it. Young people may have lots of problems, but they can be some upbeat. When we be upbeat, they be upbeat, and we can get the problems and we get them sorted out by signposting to the proper people, like maybe the mental health problems, maybe the addiction problems, maybe just a wee bit of counselling. And a lot of it's maybe teach them just how to look after their flat.
And you're an important, stable person in their lives, because perhaps they've come from situations where not all the adults were dependable.
No, certainly not. You know, when harm has happened to all these young people, it hasn't happened from our young people, it's happened by the hands of adults. You know, they're there because of what happened with direct abuse or different things from adults. So that's why most of our young people are. So it's get them in and get them to trust again in people, you know, and take away this whole part of rejection, because all their life, all they've had is rejection after rejection after rejection. So we're there trying to eliminate that, give them a steady place to live, and then build on it, and then through time move them into the community where they can live on their own and start thriving.
And I suppose the very fact that we don't see many of these people around the streets is a sign of how important your work is, Eileen, that you're actually providing a service to ensure that these young people who are struggling, and older people who are struggling, are not terribly visible to the rest of our community. That's a benefit for us, but it also is a credit to the work of you and similar organisations.
You're 100% correct. I mean, it's not just First Housing, there's also the Methodist Mission, DePaul, Simon Community, Women in Alcohol. There's loads of services that are working in the homeless sector and the Derry area, and it is because of those services and the funding that we receive from the Housing Executive Supporting People, the Trust, that we're all able to do the work that we're doing. And even during COVID, we have found that those organisations have been even more supportive because we've been given additional funding to deal with the things that you would face in relation to COVID. I mean, Eddie, you can talk about the activities you've provided for the young people. We've provided food, heating tokens, everything for residents that are in extreme difficulty, because remember, homeless people suffer a great deal of poverty. They don't have the same advantages that a lot of us in the city take for granted. So they come from very extreme backgrounds, and they do need a lot of support. So,
and education may not have been all that they would have needed from it, and job prospects probably are difficult enough. Perhaps if they're coming from an environment where the adults round about them weren't accustomed to work.
That's true, and that's what we've seen. And as an organisation, as well as providing homeless, we've seen the very things that you're talking about. Our young people started out with very poor life chances. They've poor experience of schooling. They've probably dropped out of schooling. So we were successful in applying to 80, and myself worked on, and others, business in the community, worked on a funding application that was able to give us £500,000 to work with those young people, to link them into employment, education and training, all the things that they had missed in their early life, and that has been a really successful project, and the big lottery has helped us with that, so that's been good.
Yeah. I presume then the lockdown has created extra pressures for those who are homeless and those who risk becoming homeless for whatever reason, because I imagine some homes with people locked up for months on end can become very tense and hard to live in.
It's very lonely for them. It's very, very lonely. You know, we had to look after our staff as well as our young people, and we had to follow all the regulations from PHA. So we had to follow the pursuit of they must wear their masks when they're around the project. We had to stop them having visitors, you know, which really cut them off. You know, and the first lockdown, what it actually done was it drove them out. So even though they were buying by the rules with inside the projects, they were outside congregating with other people with the possibility of bringing COVID in. You know, but the big change to me was when the shops started making them wear masks. So the young people realised then, do you know something? We have to wear masks. So it made it easier. They started to wear their masks, and then we introduced a bubble. So they were all allowed one bubble where they could have one visitor, and that relieved a lot of it. And looking back now, a year ago, to where we are now, they've really accepted what's happening, and they really try their hardest to abide by all the rules that has been laid out by COVID.
But I imagine young people want to socialise, they want to meet their peers, they want to find their place in this world, they want to establish their own identity, and the lockdown has made that sort of mixing much more difficult.
Yeah, not just in the homeless sector. You know, I have teenage boys, and it's the same with them. They're dying at the butt to get out and meet up with people, but they can't. You know, and I think even when they do, it's now they're going for walks, maybe up a flight or different things like that. You know, and when they are meeting their standard, what I've noticed recently more than ever is when our young people are leaving the likes of the project, they're sanitising their hands. And when they come in, they're sanitising their hands. So they turned away. Yes, they're going out and they're still meeting with people, but they're more cautious than what we would have been. Probably like us all would have been maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
You know, so
They've
they're
been
starting
very
to
good.
toe the line a bit. You know,
I presume there's lots of pressure to abuse substances. I mean, there are people who benefit from selling all sorts of stuff, and young people, especially those who feel vulnerable, must be under huge pressure at times. And especially if you're bored or tired or nothing to do, and there must be a big temptation.
It's an escape route. You know, and years ago would have been alcohol, would have been everybody's escape route. Now because it's cheaper for them and easier to get drugs than it is to get alcohol, especially if the pub's closed. You know, so a lot of them is turning to different forms of drugs. And at a particular moment in time, because it's drugs is harder to find on the ground, they're using cocktails of drugs. So using drugs that they might not have used before. Hence, I think the hospitals are having a lot more difficulty with people coming on with overdoses, and so whatever they can get their hands on, they take their mind away from what baggage they're carrying, or what mental health they're going through, or depression they're going through. They'll take it.
And mental health issues are remarkably widespread, Eileen, I suppose, across society. They're not always seen, and you don't sort of wear a bandage when you've got a broken heart, but I imagine mental health issues are a considerable problem for many people, especially when they're under pressure.
It is a big factor with homeless people, mental health, and I mean we have a project that deals specifically with it, but the fact that that project is there and that the support is ongoing, that they have someone they can talk to, that relieves the pressure on them, or that someone can go out for a cup of coffee with them or take them shopping. Where traditionally before our projects opened in relation to mental health, we would have found that people would have been in a crisis more, and they would have been more reliant on the emergency services and having to go into hospital and losing their accommodation. And those things aren't so prevalent nowadays because we're able to work with it. But it is a big factor now in terms of COVID and what people are experiencing. And I think as we come out and start to come out of COVID, that is a tsunami that's waiting to happen. And I just hope that the services are there to deal with, we're going to be left to deal with when post-COVID comes.
Yes, like the Troubles, we really only saw the effects after the Troubles were over, after the pressure cooker came off. You're saying that there'll be a lot of scars that will only become visible over the next 6 and 12 months.
I do think that's the case, and as Eddie was saying, we have a lot of problems in front of us. There are a lot of people now that are on furlough, and when that ends, some of those businesses will never come back, and a lot of people are worrying in the community at this minute about their future. It's having a toll on their families and their children and that, and we just don't know what problems are indoors waiting to happen.
And being able to afford rents or mortgages or whatever commitments that people have taken on.
It's going to come crashing down. There's going to be so many people, and I think a lot of people is going to have to rely a lot on their faith, on the faith of the community to try and help out, and it's going to be so important that everybody gets together. And I know everybody has got together over COVID and stuck together, and I think coming out of it, it's going to be just as difficult.
I think we have to find ways of talking up the future and saying we can do things, because I think there's a lot of fear out there and worry about what the future holds for people. I think we have to find ways of celebrating goodness and generosity and kindness and opportunity despite the problems.
Yeah, I think one thing Derry is absolutely fabulous for, apart from music, is the banter. And I think we need more and more banter to lift people's spirits over the next number of months and bring us right out of this, wherever that people want to call it, this nightmare of COVID.
I presume most of the people who are homeless here or under pressure that way are ultimately from here. We don't import a lot of homeless.
We don't. From time to time we get people, I remember once doing housing advice and asking somebody, what brought you to Derry? And they said it was the last stop on the train. We don't get that many, but we do get some people from outside the city, and that can be a lonely experience from them because they're far away from home and estranged from family as well. So those are things you got to cope with. But we do have quite a lot of homeless of our own. I think we've 1,400 people in Derry at the minute that are homeless, that are not on the streets but in temporary accommodation. And that could be growing. That was the last count, and that's a wee while before COVID. I was thinking about, throughout Northern Ireland, the 20,000 people who are homeless, and when you put the children into that, that's a lot of people who are homeless.
And I think you were saying earlier that the homeless doesn't mean addicted to drink or dope.
No.
People can be homeless for all sorts of reasons, and perhaps be going to work and have everything apparently on their side.
That's right. People come homeless. It's family breakdown, poverty, not being able to afford their rents, and young people in particular have real difficulty affording their rents when you look at the benefit system and what they get on benefits. I don't know how they can live on it, never mind the young people. It's a meagre income for a young person, and they have a poor start. But
and no part-time jobs now?
And 0 hours contracts, all that there, all going to play, and no real opportunities for them at this minute in time, and then their education's all disrupted as well. So the future's pretty bleak, and I think when we come out of it, we're going to have to look at some way where we can get skills and education for those young people, and something for them to look forward to have a positive future, because at the minute it is looking pretty bleak, and for homeless people it looks worse.
Particularly bleak. And I mean, let's talk about that cold reality. A lot of people do choose, for whatever reason, to end their own lives.
Yep.
And that's a frightening thing for many families, many parents, which suggests a real well of pain in particularly a lot of young people.
Yeah. We have quite a lot of young people throughout the years that have self-harmed, and at the start you're sort of thinking, why do they self-harm? And I remember many times sitting beside a young girl and she was cutting, and you can't do none until they finish cutting, then you help them because they have to go through it themselves. And she turned and says, while I'm cutting, I keep myself from suicide. So that was a way of her stopping herself from committing suicide, and it's a way of them releasing the tensions within their body, and there is loads of help, and we're grand when they're younger. We've got the likes of CAMs, and they'll stay in there and they'll keep trying to get back in them, and we're very lucky. We have a lady, Dr. Lynn Connors, who at any time would lift the phone to us, once we need someone at all. None would help us out. It's when they move up beyond the adult services, they don't have the same amount of staffing.
Mm-hmm.
So adult services will give maybe 1 or 2 goes, and if we're not there, they miss a couple of appointments through one thing or another. They're back. They have to go back to GP again.
And if people have suffered abuse of one sort or another when they were young,
yep. And this is
that can be a pain that's with
yep.
people for the rest of their days. Something has been damaged or
yep.
scarred.
This is their relief from that there, and then when they're not cutting, they'll turn into drink, and they'll turn into drugs and different things like that there to relieve the pain of what they've gone through their life.
I mean, I think let's be honest, for the vast majority of young people, church doesn't play any significant role in their lives.
I wouldn't say it's fully true, Bishop, because a lot of our young people, no matter what they're carrying around with them, some of them will come in with a plastic bag, and all their possessions in that plastic bag. And more times than often, that plastic bag, or at least a pair of rosary beads, are a holy relic of some description.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's their only possessions, and they're holding so tight to them, then there's faith there, and they've got faith somewhere. And it's saying as they build up their own lives, and they realise that there is faith, there is a God, and there is a way of praying, because you can see them praying, and you can see it in their eyes. They just want to have normality. When we put them into any of our projects, one thing about First Housing that I learned from the very, very start, from Jerry Coach's days, is that each of the projects are furnished to perfection. So when they move into a flat, it's got all the best of stuff in it, because we want them to feel special, and we want them to feel the time they leave us, that they can achieve the same as what we have been able to found from day one. And that's what our goal is, that they can move on and take that with them, and get a better start, a later start in life, but they've got that wee helping up to help them.
Okay, well, and I'm conscious too that we've worked a lot during lockdown in churches with church services online, but yep. I'm sort of wondering, what can parishioners or parishes do that's going to help the wide range of people of all ages, and specifically young people you're talking about, who are homeless or living in insecure accommodation in the city? What can our parishes do that would be useful and helpful?
Well, so pray, okay, and I don't say it lightly, because I know myself. Myself, my wife, and 2 other boys had COVID over Christmas, and I knew that Rona's Mara was praying hard for us. And we could feel no, she was praying, and we luckily came out of it unscathed. We had 2 or 3 weeks of difficulty, but we came out of it a lot better than a lot of our people and a lot of our families, And the help I think that we need now, coming out of this COVID now, for a lot of our young people, is prayer. And if people can help in our ways, such if they are going to make donations, make it directly to the organisations that's doing the homeless work.
Like Samaritans, Vincent de Paul.
Samaritans, Vincent de Paul, the First Housing themselves, you know, because we know them. If it's Alexis and Vincent de Paul or the Churches Trust, we know we can go to them and we know they'll help us directly, you know. But if it's going to people you're not helping somebody in the street behind the money. You're feeding their addiction.
But is talking to somebody on the street useful in most cases, or I mean, I would try to talk to ones down at the Bank of Ireland there, and they seem keen to talk.
They feel valued. I mean, a lot of people passing by and they don't even give them a kind look or a second thought when somebody stops to talk. I mean, everybody knows Jimmy. Jimmy's dead now.
Aye, Scott's Jimmy.
Jimmy with the teddy bear. He loved him, and after anybody, he wouldn't let anybody pass by. And the people of Derry loved him, so they all loved to talk. And I mean, my own cousin was an alcoholic and has words where don't think. What was the words? It's don't look down on anybody unless you're going to give them a hand up.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Don't judge anyone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. That old phrase. We have no idea what someone's past has been and how they've been scarred by people other than themselves.
Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring. You know, God forbid, it could be any one of us.
We're only 3 paychecks away from homelessness, every one of us.
Yeah. And yet, for those for whom things are going reasonably okay, we live in a different world from those who are living on the edge, hanging on by their fingertips.
It's a very thin line, Paul. Very thin line.
And you're saying, obviously, that lockdown and the economic effects, whatever comes from the
budget.
budget.
Lockdowns and you're down there and you're feeling it yourself. You know.
You feel down on yourself and everybody else is down on you, and the prospects are not good.
He says a wee while ago there about faith within homelessness. We had a young man who's severe mental health problems. It wasn't drink, it wasn't drugs. Severe mental health problems. And he couldn't even watch TV, right, because he was so paranoid. He couldn't walk down through the courtyard, and if he seen something on the ground, he'd have to pick it up, he'd think he'd lost it, really. And then someone told me to Mass, right? And I started going to Mass steady every day. Okay, and then the guy started taking me to turn my back on. Okay, since that has happened, since he found that faith, he's been away on 3 or 4 holidays on his own, where he couldn't have went to shop on his own 2 years ago. You know, he's even at times got the bus to Knock, stayed over a couple of nights in Knock, and came back, and he found his faith. Okay. And that has helped his mental health unbelievable. Okay. He can watch TV now, he can walk anywhere in the town, and he's fine. Not fine, but he's fine.
I suppose finding peace with ourselves and finding peace sometimes with our past can be hard. And then I think that would help, particularly in the faith dimension, maybe to forgive others or to be able to forgive ourselves. Can be important for healing and getting people back on their feet again. I think we're getting to the end of our time, folks. First Housing, Adrian Kehoe, Eileen Best, thank you so much for being here talking about this evening. I think we could have heard lots more stories. I appreciate you coming along, taking the risk of just starting the conversation in front of the hundreds, perhaps thousands who are watching us up there. Thank you very much for following us this evening. Please God, we're back again next Tuesday with another COVID conversation. If anyone wants to switch over now, Mass begins in the Cathedral at 7:30. Go onto the webcam there, and then Please God, will be there at 8 o'clock for exposition, rosary and night prayer, finishing about 8:30. So thank you very much for being with us this evening. Thank you to Eileen and to Adrian. Thank you to Charlotte, who looked after the technical side. God bless you on your Lenten journey. Look forward to seeing you next week. Slán agus Beannacht.